Ezekiel chapter 20. And it came to pass in the 7th year, in the 5th month, the 10th day of the month, that certain of the elders of Israel came to inquire of the Lord and sat before me. This is Ezekiel, the prophet of God. He said, certain of the elders of Israel, they came to inquire of God. Well, that's a good thing, wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you think that that'd be a great thing, that they came to inquire of God? Well, let's see what God's response is to it in verse number 2. Then came the word of the Lord unto me, saying, God spoke expressly through the prophets. God, he gave Ezekiel exactly what to say. Ezekiel didn't scratch his head and say, well, I wonder what I'm going to say to these elders. God told him what to say. I still believe that God tells his men what to say. I honestly believe that. I believe that we're not here to preach our sermons. We're here to preach a message from God. Amen? And when you go to prepare a sermon, or when you go to prepare a message, it's not your message, it's God's message. Amen? When you come to church, you're not coming to hear the preacher's sermon. You ought to come to hear God's message. And that's what, listen, they came to inquire of the Lord. And so God told Ezekiel what to say. And here's what he said, verse number 3, Son of man, speak unto the elders of Israel. First of all, God preaches to Ezekiel. First of all, he tells Ezekiel what to do. He said, speak to the elders, speak unto the elders of Israel, and here's what I want you to say unto them. Thus saith the Lord, are ye come to inquire of me? Ask them this question. Are you come to inquire of me? As I live, saith the Lord, I will not be inquired of by you. Boy, doesn't that seem inhospitable? Doesn't that just seem unfair, unkind? Here these men, these elders of Israel, went out of their way to come to Ezekiel to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to Ezekiel, tell them they're not going to ask me anything. I don't want to hear from them. I'm not going to talk to them. They're not going to talk to me. Well, it doesn't seem right. Doesn't that seem unkind? These are the elders. And so the Bible said, he said, I will not be inquired of by you. And verse number 4, again, God's preaching to Ezekiel. He's talking to Ezekiel. It's like God takes his finger and he's pointing at Ezekiel. And he said, listen, wilt thou judge them, son of man? Wilt thou judge them? Cause them to know the abominations of their fathers. He's saying, Ezekiel, are you man enough? Are you willing to stand in my place and show them what they've done wrong? He's asking Ezekiel, are you an ear-tickling preacher? Are you a penny pincher? Are you just going to whisper? Are you going to be one of those prophets of God? Or are you going to be one of those kind of preachers that tell the people what they want to hear? Or are you going to tell them what I need them to hear? Are you going to be that kind? Ezekiel, judge them. Are you going to judge them or not? He said, I'm going to tell you what they are. Are you going to be man enough to represent me? That's the kind of men God's looking for in this day and time which we live. Listen, there are preachers aplenty, but God needs, and man, we need, the people of God desperately need men of God who will speak on behalf of God and deliver God's message and will stand and judge righteous judgment and judge the wicked crowd. I'm talking about the religious wicked crowd, the people who profess to be coming to inquire of God, but it's all a facade, it's all fake, and God is saying to Ezekiel, are you my man or not? God constantly demands Ezekiel to affirm that. And you know what? There's good reason for it. Because the wear and tear of the ministry, a man of God, a preacher, is going to have to constantly affirm within himself, am I that kind of man or not? Am I going to give way to the wear and tear? Am I going to continue to preach the truth of God even though people resist the truth of God? Am I going to continue to be faithful and judge people righteously according to God's judgment? Or am I going to decide one day that, you know what, I'm tired of being an outcast. I'm tired of being scoffed at. I'm tired of when people come to hear me preach, I run them all off. These people came to hear Ezekiel preach, and Ezekiel is going to run them all off the first day. That's what they say to you. Hey, your peers will say to you. They'll say, now listen, hey, don't chase everybody off. You'll never build a church if you run everybody off. Brother, listen, hey, far be it from any man of God, far be it from any man of God, any professed man of God to stand up and for his purpose to be to draw a crowd of people rather than preach the truth of God. Our purpose is not to draw a crowd. Our purpose is to preach the truth of God. That's why we're here. You say, why? Because if we truly love people, we're going to have to preach the truth to them. What we need, what I need when I come to hear preaching, I don't need somebody to tickle my ears. I don't need someone to pat me on the back. Hey, listen, there are times for encouraging messages and there are times for comforting messages, and God will tell us when to do that. But most of the time, most often, we need to be mindful of the fact that folks need to be reminded of their wickedness, of their sinful condition. There is such a thing as hypocrisy, and God despises hypocrisy. Ezekiel learned in his ministry that the people were hypocritical. And these people came to hear him.